7th, 2020. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Karen,
Here.
and your location?
Marshall.
Thank you. Councilmember Gates,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember McNeil,
Here, Milwaukee.
Councilmember Metzger,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Traver,
Present, Marshall.
Councilmember Underhill,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Wolfersberger.
Here, Marshall.
Thank you. We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. We will start this evening with an invocation from Ruth Ann Holmes of United Methodist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I do not see that name on here at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, then we will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor, if I see there's at least 2 phone numbers on here. I don't know if that's Miss Holmes or not. Possibly the 2 phone numbers there.
If it is, if you could raise your hand or comment in the chat section, we'd appreciate it.
If they're on the phone, if they do a *9, that will show that they're raising their hand. So they push *9 on their cell phone if they're calling in. But I see a hand raised on that one number, Eric.
The 919 number, you need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. You should be good. We can hear you now.
Maybe we move on, Mayor.
Yeah, it looks as if that number is disconnected. So we will move on this evening with the approval of agenda, starting with public comment on agenda items, followed by the consent agenda. Under item 8A, we have the 2020 annual financial audit. Under 8B, we have certificates of appreciation. Under 10A, for public hearings and subsequent council action, we have the solid waste disposal ordinance. Item 10B, we have the zoning ordinance and city ordinance, chapter 121 to define hoop houses and commercial greenhouse and define use standards. Under 10C, we have obsolete property rehabilitation exemption. Under 11A, under old business, we have city council rules of procedure. Item 12A, we have the transformer purchases for Cresco Labs. Under 12B, we have the social district changes. Under 12C, we have solid waste proposals. 12D, we have Assistant Director of Electric Utilities salary and FiberNet Manager, IT Team Leader salary adjustment. Under 14, we have public comment on non-agenda items and council and manager communications.
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
We have a motion by member Metzger, support by member Wolfersberger. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
and Mayor Karen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to address the council may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes, stating their name and address for record. If you're interested in speaking at this time, please either raise your hand or comment in the chat function.
The 269 phone number had their hand raised early. And they've been authorized to speak. So if you hit *6.
Yeah, this is Mike Yarger with Republic Services. I don't have any comments. Just wanted to let you guys know I'm on the call.
Thank you.
Barry Wayne Adams is will be up in a second.
Good
Hello,
evening, Barry. We can hear you.
hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's disappointing to see that you people have decided to resurrect something that should have been buried and put away. Looks like the will of the people really doesn't matter in Marshall. But I must give you conspicuous notice that I have not conferred or delegated to the city any capacity to enter into any contract in my behalf. And if it tries to do so, then there's going to be some serious legal problems. What you're trying to do here has the same constitutional infirmity that the Affordable Care Act had. And when you try to force a contract on individual Americans, you overstep your boundaries of authority. And when you're trying to say that you have the ability to tell me how I want to dispose of my property, then you've taken away a fundamental constitutional right and are really, in an institutional sense, trying to impose a master-slave dynamic on the citizens of the city. Americans are allowed to make their own contracts with private entities. And to take away that ability to enter into contract or to not enter into contract is a fundamental violation of constitutional rights. And it really shows me that the agenda of the city is not consonant with the interests of the citizens of the city, and appears to operate in antagonism to the individual interests of Americans. It's very disappointing to see this kind of thing happening. You're trying to monopolize competitive business. That's a federal thing. Inhibiting commerce. The whole thing smells as bad as the garbage you're trying to remove. And I hope you don't pursue this, because it will necessitate having to test all these things in federal court. My ability to enter into a contract or not enter into a contract is sacrosanct, and I take it as a very serious matter when there's a frivolous effort to take these, usurp these rights from individual Americans. The Constitution means something. You people took an oath of office. When you violate that oath of office, it's incumbent upon us individual citizens to take remedial action, and that will happen if you choose to pursue the agenda you're pursuing. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Barry. Next, it looks like we have Vicki DeGraw.
Hi, this is Vicki DeGraw. I live at 609 Hill Road. I am an IT project manager by profession. So when you start to send me information on RFPs and costs, I'm looking for the total cost. I don't see anywhere where you have a complete cost analysis. You've only provided an RFP, which only tells us a portion of the story. It doesn't tell us the information about what it's going to cost the city as a whole. It only tells us on what it's going to cost the individual residents. Like the speaker ahead of me, I don't believe that you should be going into a contract for all of us, not unless you have put this to a vote and allowed us to vote on this. This notification, by sending it out in Facebook and giving us snippets of information without giving us the whole picture, is truly patronizing. You've given us the cost of the RFP. You have not given us the cost, what it's going to cost in our tax dollars to support this contract should you go into it. I also think that by doing it on a Zoom meeting during the middle of a pandemic, I can't think of the right words, it's just wrong. There are a lot of people that don't know how to get onto Zoom. There are a lot of people that don't know how to call in. That you were given a week's notice that this was still occurring after all the meetings that occurred a year ago. And you got public feedback that said, we don't want this. Yet now here you are still pursuing it and spending time on this. I'm very disappointed. I would hope that you would vote this down and not pursue it any further. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional comments on agenda items this evening? All right, seeing and hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Item 7A on the consent agenda is to schedule a public hearing for the amendment to City Ordinance Chapter 70, the Vehicle and Traffic Code. Item 7B is the 2021 City Council meeting schedule. Item 7C are the 2021 boards and commissions. Item 7D is the Title VI non-discrimination plan. Item 7E is the MERS Plan Addendum Agreement. Item 7F, we have the City Council minutes for the work session on Monday, November 16th, 2020, the regular session on Monday, November 16th, 2020, and a special session on Thursday, November 2020. And 7G, we have city bills totaling $249,344.09.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I did have one quick question on the MERS plan. I just want to make sure I understand. It seems very straightforward. I just want to make sure I understand that this is simply consolidating all the addendums that have happened over time down, so it's just one document again. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I had one question as well on the electric vehicles ordinance. When we talked about that last, I had brought up a question about children and helmets. Do we know, have we looked into that? Is that covered by state statute?
Scott, would you be willing to take that? McDonald?
Yes, I will. Yeah, we did look at it as not covered by state statute. Attorney Sullivan and I did research the issue some. There's only a handful, maybe 15, 20 states that regulate that. Mostly what we're finding is by city, and it's all over the place from 12-year-olds to 18 to 21-year-olds. It would be pretty complicated. We're more willing to look in it. We would just like a little direction from council, whether you'd want that geared towards children or the population as a whole. Would you want it on bikes, skateboards, or all these different vehicles?
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but I personally would like to see us look at it for, children, say 12 years old and younger.
Okay.
And just because, my wife being a physician, I know that concussions among that age group can be common and can be very serious. I don't have an interest in regulating adults and whether or not they want to wear helmets, but for children, I think it's something we should look at.
Okay. If there's any other questions, what Attorney Sullivan and I will do is kind of get a list of what we found out there and then disseminate it to this group, and then we could move forward working on something to present to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions on the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, we have a motion from Member Metzger,
Support.
support from Member McNeil. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
and Member Gates.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us on to item 8A on the agenda, to the 2020 financial audit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce at this time, to introduce Matt Holland from Gabridge and Company, and he will present our 2020 audit tonight.
Hi there. Sorry, I dropped there when I was getting my video on. Do we have, Eric, do you have the slides I had sent? Can you bring it up? There we go. So I'm gonna quick run through just some of the highlights and then have time for questions at the end. So we are still in process of completing the 2020 audit. We are materially complete, but we're still waiting on some small parts. We're still waiting on the CAFR comments, I believe. The GFOA has been pretty slow this year in getting those out. Did have one county that had to file without having those comments, so we'll wait on that to get the final version out there. But for now, I'm going to run through our quick highlights. So if we want to go to the second slide. We are expecting to issue a unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of opinion you can receive. It's the highest level of assurance. So that's what the city should expect to get every year. It's not a guarantee. So congratulations on that. We had no internal control deficiencies to note, which is also something a city of Marshall size should expect. It's also not a guarantee. So it's always good. On the less good side, the electric and fiber net fund will also need to have deficit elimination plans filed again this year. They both have unrestricted deficits and their current assets are exceeded by their current liabilities, which is what the state defines as the need for that deficit elimination plan. And in the budget, there were no material variances that would require a letter of response to the state, which is, I guess, be 10% over budget and 10% greater than the budget of the fund as a whole. So it's also good to see. Next, I'm just going to go over some quick metrics. So if we want to go to slide 3, this is the general fund balance as a whole and cash equivalents. Which we will see is been increasing over the years, the cash balance. The cash balance took a big jump this year due to an internal balancing for the pooled cash account, which we will talk about a little bit later. The electric fund and the FiberNet fund obviously have started to drain on those cash amounts. So in the prior years, the electric fund's deficit of cash was just netted against the general funds. This year, it exceeded the amount in the general fund, which is the reason why we actually see a jump in cash as of year end in the general fund. But the fund balance has been increasing over the last 5 years, which is always great to see for the general fund. The next slide is the annualized percentage of expenditures. The GFOA tends to recommend 25%, roughly, give or take, as a healthy metric for a city. Obviously, the GFOA does kind of gear towards larger cities as a whole. So the smaller the entity, the larger we tend to see that annualized percentage. So as you've seen, almost all 5 years, it's been 25%. So that's also a good amount of fund balance. So that's nice to see in the general fund that's been protected. The next two slides show the sources and expenses by function. The city's revenues mostly come from property taxes, charges for services, other miscellaneous sources, and then the state revenue sharing for 10%, and then another 16% in transfers in to the general fund, which is a indirect cost. The next slide is the expenditures and the governmental activities. The third being public safety, and almost another third to general government, quarter to public works, and the rest to the other functions. That's pretty standard for a city. So always nice to see. Next, we're going to talk about the two proprietary funds that have starting to have some cash balance issues. The electric fund has had a pretty stable to small decline in net income, but as we can see, the cash balances, once we net out the internal balance that we're required to record, because the state doesn't allow you to show a negative cash balance on the financial statements. In the electric fund, this year's would have been $2.5 million as a negative, and last year was roughly 1.5. Obviously, part of that is that long-term advance to the FiberNet fund, but that's apparently illiquid as well, so that wasn't factored into this analysis. Go to the FiberNet fund. We'll see, obviously, the cash has declined over time as the project got off its feet. So that's a little more to be expected with a new type fund, but that is something that should be monitored as that fund owes cash to, I believe, the general fund, the water fund, the electric fund, the LDFA. So obviously something to pay attention to is those charges for services there. If that continues at some point, I would say it's currently concerning, and it could get worse if it continues the way it's going. The last thing I was going to talk about is the legacy costs. The net pension liability increased slightly this year by $137,000 to a total liability of almost $15 million. That's just near 60% funded, and the actuarially determined cost is 15% of the governmental revenues. So this, along with the OPEB, which is saw a decrease of $1.7 or $1.6 million roughly, for a total net OPEB liability of $8 million, which is 12% funded with a 50% ADC. Both of these would trigger underfunded status or unfunded status with Treasury. I believe the city has a corrective action plan from last year or 2 years ago in place still. So you won't have to go through that same process if you're meeting those benchmarks. Obviously, the net pension liability, if it gets 0.12% more funded, it won't even be in that threshold anymore. So the net pension liability is almost there. The net OPEB obviously had a good jump this year with some actuarial assumptions changing. So those have both seen good trends in the last couple of years. Those were the big points we wanted to talk about. Yes, I'm open to any questions.
It doesn't sound very flowery right now.
Yeah, the general fund, I would say it seems like the funds are doing pretty well. It's just those two utilities they've shown operating income over the past couple of years, but that's not all cash basis. And a big chunk of last year's increase was due to the assumption changes in the OPEB. So it actually made expenses look lower than the actual cash outflows were. So it's something I would pay attention to long term, because obviously draining on those cash resources, it's going to cannibalize all the other funds' cash, and could be a concern.
Okay.
Any additional questions for Matt or John? Would you like to add anything at this point?
John, are you optimistic this is going to turn around?
We continue to say that year in, year out. I'm hoping that it will. But again, there's no guarantee. Like Matt said, we need to watch it very carefully. And we continue to do that. And hopefully, with the marijuana revenues, it will turn the corner. But there's no guarantee at this point.
I'm curious just about the trend for FiberNet. Are we on pace to turn that around? Or I know that we've been slowly adding more customers, but can you just update us where we are on that?
Well, one thing that we're going to need to bring back to you, because you didn't take action a couple of months ago when we brought it to you, is the planned, in the original cost benefit analysis, we were going to do a raise of that. We brought that to you a couple of months ago. You declined to do that. This has got to come back to start helping that fund. So you'll see that reported again the first part of the year. That's one thing. But John, go ahead if you had something else.
Well, I think we're at the point of positive cash flow for FiberNet. That's a good trend. It's a long time coming. But as far as the huge change that we were looking for, it's not there yet. So hopefully, going forward with the positive cash flow, we can slowly start paying back the loan. It won't be paid back anytime sooner than we thought, but it will be paid back. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, the fiber fund this year is going to show a small decrease in operating income, but obviously most of that difference between it is depreciation in the current year. So like John said, it is at this point looking cash positive. So that's always good to see. And that loan is effectively, you have to think of it like a 30-year bond, I guess.
Well, Matthew, we don't want you to come back anymore. Thank you, though.
I'm sorry, it could be rosier.
I would like to say thank you, Matt. This is the 5th year of the Gaybridge engagement. We will be going out for an RFP probably in the spring. And I enjoy working with Matt and his fellow colleagues. And I really appreciate everything that Gaybridge and Company has brought to the city. And I just want to thank him again. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you all for your time, and we'll look forward to seeing that RFP and putting our bid in. And if any other questions arise, feel free to reach out to us. John knows how to get a hold of us. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda, we have item 8B, certificates of appreciation. So we have a few people that have been on some of our boards and commissions that their terms are expiring in 2020. One of them being Scott Morrison, who's been on the Construction Board of Appeals, October 2016 through June 2020. Matt Rogers, who served on our Planning Commission from May 2014 through November 2020. And then Susan Collins, who's been on our Planning Commission. She was appointed in November 2005 to fill the unexpired seat of her husband, John Collins, and she passed away this November. So this is just a time that we want to thank everyone for their time, especially Susan and John and all that they have done for our community. And we're very appreciative and grateful for putting the community first and doing what you've done serving these terms. So thank you very much. We will send out a recognition to Scott and Matt in the mail since we're not able to meet in person. But again, thank you, and we appreciate your service to the community. All right, next on the agenda, we will move to public hearings. We have the solid waste disposal ordinance. We're going to have Eric brief us on this before we open up the public hearing.
I'm going to jump in before Eric, Mayor, if I could. About a year ago, we had a public hearing. We heard comments from many people about the things they didn't like and liked. And at that time, we had a carrier that has been bought. And so what we brought back as part of your strategic goals, so we discussed this. And so what we have taken into account is most of the comments that were made at that meeting. And Eric's going to highlight those before you open the public hearing. And then if there's questions, and then if you would then go into the public hearing, and we could then respond after those questions are asked by the public.
Good evening, everybody. Including in your packets, the proposed rewrite of the solid waste ordinance, so chapter 50 of the Code of Ordinances. Specifically, this ordinance is, in all essence, very similar to the one that was presented last December. It allows for the exclusive single hauler contract to be granted by the city. It talks about the disposal of refuse, defines that, and we've actually, working with Director McDonald, we moved definitions to be similar across all of our ordinances, because we had multiple ordinances that had different definitions of what garbage was, what refuse was, what trash was. So we were aiming for consistency on that. This specifically targets the trash and recycling. Last year, there was more language on brush and loose leaves. There is still some in here because we do provide that service. So we wanted to provide a structure specifically in the ordinance to provide that service to the residents. It's just not included in the RFP that was released, which we'll discuss later in the agenda. The ordinance allows you to set rates and charges by resolution. It discusses issuance of civil infractions if necessary, hopefully not. And sets the different other aspects of liens. Charges for unpaid charges are provided as a tax lien. So that's the specifics of the ordinance itself. It's very general. The idea was the specifics on the single waste hauler, if that's a direction you want to go in, we're covered under the rates and charges, which are similar to what's also done in the water, wastewater, electric, fiber net area. So there's a separate structure for the specifics where we talked about like snowbirds, the possibility for snowbirds to be exempted, that's covered in the rates and regulations. This specific does talk about properties with 3 residential units and less. That's what's covered by this ordinance. Anything above is considered commercial, so that's not something that would be included in the single hauler contract. So that's the specifics on the ordinance. I'm happy to discuss anything. I was going to talk about the RFP more later. If there's any other specifics you would like me to bring up right now, I'm more than happy to.
Eric, could we, since it's already been brought up in public comments, could you address why we weren't able to bring this as a vote on the November ballot?
Yeah, we actually did. Thanks, Scott. We did look at that. Had multiple discussions with Attorney Revor. That was our inclination. We really would have preferred to go that route. There is no mechanism for a city to put an ordinance on a ballot. So even if you wanted to say, hey, we want to vote of the people on this issue, you have no mechanism for that. There's only 2 mechanisms to put something like that on a ballot. It's a petition and referendum. So it'd have to be voter initiated on either side. So voters would have to put a petition out to put something on the ballot to approve, say, an ordinance, or they would have to do a referendum if an ordinance has been approved, whether or not they want to move forward or not. There's a process that's in the city charter. Nowhere in the city charter or Home Rule Cities Act does it provide for our ability to ask our residents for their guidance on that issue from a vote.
Thank you.
All right, any additional comments or questions from the council?
One thing I just, Eric, if you could speak to a little bit would be, I know one of the reasons why we've been considering this is the issue of wear and tear on the roads. So I don't know if Marguerite's around or if you'd like to speak to that and how this measure might address that issue.
The justifications, I can talk more specifically on that. Give me just a second. The justifications for looking at this are multiple. I didn't want to get too much into the specific rates and things like that. We can do that later. But one was looking at it, could we save the residents money by moving forward with a contract because we have the purchasing power of the city versus me as a resident going out saying, hi Republic, hi Granger, hi Waste Management, I want service. They're going to say, well, here's your rate. With the purchasing power, you have a little bit more leverage. Yes, wear and tear on the roads is an issue. We know our residents did approve a millage earlier this year, and we are very grateful for that. So one aspect of it is we need to protect those roads. A garbage truck going through a neighborhood is equivalent to 1,200 car trips going through a neighborhood. And that's from a study done in Colorado. So you're talking a 31,000 to 50,000 pound vehicle going through a residential neighborhood where it's not designed for the type of heavy truck. Right now we have 3 providers in town, one of them whom also provides recycling. So we have 4 vehicles, 3 every week and 1 every other week, depending on your neighborhood. Under this proposal we'd go down to 1 every week in a neighborhood and then 1 every other week as recycling got picked up. So we would eliminate 2 to 3 trucks a week. So that is heavy weight on a neighborhood street. If it's on Michigan Avenue, Kalamazoo, those are designed more for the heavy truck traffic. So those are a couple of the big reasons why we were looking at this. And if we figured if we could provide a better level of service to our residents with adding recycling, the ability for recycling, because only right now Republic provides that. If we could lower the trash price, it was something that, as you directed us to look at, because of those reasons. And if it made sense when you looked at the numbers, that's something that you make a decision when that time came.
Since we're asking questions, briefly again, Eric, what is the logic behind the city wanting to take the liability for collecting the bills, and what would the cost be annually for so?
The cost for the logic is we can leverage a lower price, obviously, because then the providers don't have to go out and work on collections. So they have me as a homeowner in town, they have to collect on my bill if I don't pay. In this case, they're billing the city. The city will then be the responsibility of collecting. So the provider can cut that price from having to have that collection aspect in place. So they provide a lower price.
But what's the differential between what they would charge with the city handling that or them handling it?
Yeah, I believe it was close to $1 per customer per month. I have the specific it's in a pile right now, but when we talked about this last January, it was more the direction of the city was going to do that service if we were going to go this route.
But, that wasn't the direction I wanted to go in.
That was the consensus. The way I took it, Nick, was to pursue that structure, shall we say.
Okay, and then what is the cost to the city annually?
When we discussed it in-house, the finance director and Tom and I, we looked at it. I was told to put $2 a month on to cover collection of services, bad debt, other aspects.
So we're charging the
$2
more.
per resident.
It is costing to have the hauler take that responsibility.
That is correct, and that's included in that rate that is presented later in the council agenda.
So again, what would be the rationale for us to do it if it's costing the city $1 more?
I understand where you're coming from, Nick. I'm just telling you, that's the cost that I was told to put on there. I put it in there. That's something that can still be explored in addition.
Was it that there would be an additional benefit for our residents to be able to call just the city number, or whether they're going to talk about trash or talk about any of their utilities? It's just a single number, single source, kind of that peace of mind and easy point access.
That is correct. You're talking to a person in the city versus somebody from the vendor who could be anywhere in the world. We felt that we could get a quicker response by calling somebody, in a city building, city hall, or public services building, and that's why we got your direction to keep it in-house and just better service.
Okay, Tom, just remember when I call you about my cell phone bill.
I believe the $2 is just a starting point at this point in time. A year from now, we'll review that, and it could be less, it could be more. We don't know that, but we wanted to make sure that we covered all of our costs up front for the first year.
And is it correct that if the council were to approve the ordinance that's being presented to us tonight, that we would not need to make a decision on a contract at this time?
You don't have to do it at this meeting. However, I believe the contract prices are good through the end of the month. So you should accept one of those proposals by the end of the month. The direction we were going to give, if you're so inclined to accept one of those proposals, is to accept the proposal and direct the city attorney and staff to work out a contract with the provider, which will then be presented at your next regularly scheduled meeting.
I'm sorry, one more point of clarity on that. So the proposed ordinance language includes the expectation that the city switch to a single hauler structure, and there is a date proposed in a period of time from when it's signed to when it's effective. Is that correct?
Yes, the ordinance is 30 days after publication.
So essentially, if we pass this, then within 30 days, we have to implement a single hauler. Am I reading that correct?
No, that you would have to accept the proposals. Our expectations, we're not going to implement the hauler until March 29th at the earliest. That's something that the provider needs at least 8 weeks time to do their transition period. We need time to work out those issues of transitioning. So that is the plan at this point.
I have one more question for you, Eric, not to jump ahead to the rates, because I know we may talk about that later, but just for anyone following along at home who might be looking at the different tier structures, they're based on how many homes and signing up. And can you just remind us how many households in Marshall have trash service right now that we've estimated, so we can have an idea of what tier we'd be in?
I know that when we looked at it last year, we were looking at over about 2,400 customers. There was, depending on how it was structured, we were allowing, so HOAs, the condo associations, not included in the ordinance. Other structures aren't. But the direction you gave us was to develop the process so it's it's an opt-out. It's not, you're not required to have the trash service. So if you have other resources, if you have work or your in-laws, your neighbor, you guys join together because you have such little trash, and do that, because we know those scenarios are all true. We've talked to people. That it's hard for us to project right now. Then everything was projected, the rate wise, everything with 1,500 residents the 1,500 to 1,999 resident is where we projected right now. But that's assuming we're going to not have everyone join on. It could go up. We could go up, and then the price from the contractor would be lower, and we would then also potentially not have we'd have a lower rate at that point too. Well, that's where the 1,500 1,999 is where we project at this point.
Okay, thank you.
I think that answered another question that was brought up at last meeting about, people who, what about me? I share my neighbors, so they could opt out. There was also the people who just don't want to recycle. They only want trash and they don't want to be forced to have to recycle. And with this new proposal today, that would also be an option, correct? They would not have to pay for recycling and use recycling.
Correct, Ryan. When we looked at their, like I said, we jumped way ahead where I was going to talk about this later, but that's fine. We can get it out now. Yeah, when we looked at it, it was to provide the possibility of trash and recycling. So we wanted to make it available at a price so people knew what they were looking at. But we heard from the residents, we heard from you specifically, provide a structure where they can opt out. So we did that. However, we still wanted the benefit of minimizing truck traffic. We wanted to provide the smaller toter I will pick on Tom because I know, for example, Tom uses a smaller toter and has said, he doesn't have the space for a bigger one. So we gave those two options. Unfortunately, when we look at the prices, the cost of the contract are the same. So they provided the same price for the smaller or larger toter. Yeah, we had this structured so the complaints came to the city. We dealt with the contractor. It wasn't us as residents having to call them and deal with the corporate environment. The proposed start date was March 29th. HOAs, if you have service, you're exempted from service. Snowbirds can say, hey, I'm leaving in October. I'll be back in May or April. And in that period of time, they wouldn't be billed for that service. Or if you just said, hey, I'm going to be out of town for a couple, a month, two. I mean, realistically, you're not going to charge, out for a couple of weeks. But if you're out for a while, yes, you could pause. Or if you just say, hey, I have another source for the next 2 years, I'm not worrying about it. The specifics, you can opt out if you want. We didn't get into the yard waste, the weekly bulk pickup, and the annual trash is priced in there, but it's not, it's not included in that proposal. We put out different terms so that they could give us their different price increases per year so we could analyze what it looks like over time. And specifically, we didn't want a fuel surcharge because we wanted a number for our residents, but if the contractor felt they needed to, they would put that in there. So that's how we designed the RFP, was to try to make it as choice friendly as possible, but still have the goal of getting that economies of scale of having a single hauler.
And this does or does not apply to downtown residents?
That is correct. Anything with the commercial aspect of it, that's a commercial building that's separate. I mean, if that's something they wanted to do and the contractor's willing to provide it, that's, at that rate, that's something between, it could be between the contractor and that resident.
Thank you.
All right, just before we open the public hearing, I did receive a couple emails from residents that I wanted to read tonight. The first one is from Doug Murch, 615 West Prospect. While I think I'm in favor of the plan for a citywide contract, I would strongly urge City Council to place the issue on the ballot. I am sure that you will have a majority of negative comments on the issue from the vocal minority in town. Placing the issue on the ballot will ensure that all voices will be heard on this. So that was from Doug Murch. I believe we spoke to that point earlier. The second one is from Daniel Williams, 409 Brandy's Place. To Joe Karen, Mayor, and all of the Marshall City Council members, please do not pass the proposed City of Marshall single hauler waste proposal at any City Council meeting. This proposal will by necessity require the city to expand its workforce and inevitably raise the cost for people who live here in the City of Marshall. If you must, at least allow city residents to directly vote on this proposal. I've been a Marshall City resident for more than 21 years and hope you will let myself and all the residents affected by this additional city requirement to have a voice on the decision. And then the third one was from Sarah and Brian Huggett, and I believe I see that Sarah is logged into the meeting this evening, so I will let her speak her letter if she would so choose to do so. So at this time, if there are any other comments from the council, I would like to go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes, stating their name and address for the record. We will go in order of hands raised. And Eric, if you can help facilitate that, please.
Mr. Adams, just unmute yourself. You should be good to go.
Hello? Hello?
I can hear you,
You're
Barry.
good, Barry.
Okay. Again, it's very disturbing to see a business-like discussion that is completely oblivious to fundamental constitutional rights. And that's one of the problems with corporate fascism, is that it routinely trods over individual rights under the pretext of enhancing commercialism and the betterment of the economy. But you guys took an oath of office. You're supposed to have that filter going on in your brain that is able to discern when things are stepping over the line. That's not happening here. And for someone to presume that opinions like mine are the vocal minority is kind of presumptuous. Wasn't too much of a minority at the last meeting, and the only reason there's a restriction on you hearing further vituperative commentary is that this is on Zoom. And each one of these Zoom meetings is, in fact, in violation of the Open Meetings Act. MCL 15263 paragraph 4 says a person shall not be required as a condition of attendance at a meeting of a public body to register or otherwise provide his or her name or other information or otherwise to fulfill a condition precedent to attendance. Well, you walk all over that with every one of these Zoom meetings. So this is corporate fascism marching full forward. And it's really disturbing to see that you guys don't see the great wrong in trying to presume that you have the ability to take contractual capacity away from me so you can further some sort of government agenda. It's the will of the people, not the will of the government. I also have Tim Ruddock here, Mr. Mayor, and he doesn't have a computer or anything. If you could give him time, I'm willing to pass the mic over. I've said enough for this thing. I'll be saying something again, but I can pass the mic over to Mr. Ruddock here for his comment.
Thank you, Barry, for your comments, and please have Tim just state his name and address for the record.
Tim Ruddock, 560 North Madison, Marshall. I'd like to know if I do not agree with the single hauler. From my experience, we're working on trucks and everything. School buses are doing more damage to our roads because they're single axle than a tandem or triple axle truck will do. And if you guys do pass it, does that mean that, being that I own land on Montgomery Street too, that I will be billed for that where I do not even have a house or produce any trash? Can't you answer that?
No, you will not be billed for Montgomery Street.
Okay. Oh, I couldn't see you shaking your head, so. All right, you know, unless there's well, you said there was an opt-out, but that's all for now. But I'll be speaking about something else later.
All right, thank you for your comments, Tim.
Mr. Mr. Mayor, Sarah Huggett said you're welcome to read hers.
Okay. All right, so the letter from Sarah Huggett. Dear Marshall City Council members, I see that switching to a consolidated waste provider is back on the City Council agenda and have already read some of the backlash. I write in support of this change and want you to know that a few loud voices in opposition do not speak for us all. We currently use Republic as our garbage service because they're the only ones that offer curbside recycling. The reasons we support using a single provider for Marshall are to reduce Marshall's carbon footprint by eliminating redundant garbage runs, to decrease the impact on city streets, to promote a culture of recycling with a curbside pickup. We routinely see piles of cardboard boxes next to garbage bins, to improve the city's aesthetic with as needed removal of large garbage items. There have been many instances on our short street where couches and mattresses have been left by the curb for weeks and months, and the better rate. We would save about $40 per year for the same services. I'm sorry to see that recycling is now an optional add-on. The small Midwestern town where I grew up has offered citywide curbside recycling for over 20 years. It is in our community's best interest to divert as much recyclable material away from the landfill as we possibly can. Not doing so is short-sighted. Anything that our town can do to lessen our collective environmental impact is a change worth fighting for. If there's anything additional we can do to support this change, please let us know. Sincerely, Sarah and Brian Huggett, Ward 3.
There was a question from Carla Robinson on the number of times trucks are going down, travel up and down a road. She lives on North Linden between two streets that dead end on the street. Without looking at the routes with the provider, there will only be one truck in your neighborhood each week picking up trash, so that would limit it there. We'd have to talk to the provider as they set their routes. And then every other week you would have a recycling truck going through the neighborhood as well.
All right, do we see any additional hands, Eric, or comments at this time?
Vicky DeGraw will be authorized here in a second.
Thank you.
You were speaking about the $2 a month additional charge. You said that's for the first year. What is the expectation in additional years? So it's not just the cost of the RFP plus 3.5%, but you've said you've tacked on a $2 a person charge. But do you expect that to go up each year? What are the limitations on that?
John, there. Okay, thank you, John.
I think at this point, it's more or less like the leaf and brush. We put it out there and we determine what is the right amount the first year, and going forward, it'll be the same type scenario. Do we increase it? Do we reduce it? We don't know at this point. But we know that for the first year, it is an amount that we can live with and deal with.
So for the first year, we may see savings, but after that, there may be no savings.
It could go up, it could go down. We don't know at this point.
And you mentioned that you were thinking of the residents by making it a one-stop shopping. I like having the competition so that if I don't like what the service is that I'm getting, that I can easily switch. So by setting up a 5-year contract, you are essentially eliminating the competition. After 5 years, our prices are definitely going up. We've seen it in other areas where there's been no competition. Marshall used to have one cable company. The stories I've heard from that are not good. I've lived in a place that had one cable company. Rates just continued to rise. So instead of making this an opt-out, if this is truly a good deal, why don't you make it an opt-in? That's all I have.
Sarah Huggett, Mr. hand raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Sarah, you should be good to go.
Okay, thanks. Actually, this is her husband, Brian Huggett. I just wanted to address City Council, the mayor, and all the city personnel that are putting this this single hauler option forward again. It's the good fight to keep putting it forward. I recognize that there is opposition to it, and I want to say that I appreciate you taking the time to hear all of our voices. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Ms. Johnson, yes, I have to authorize you to speak. So if you give me a second, I will authorize you to talk. And then you should be good now. Just unmute yourself. Heather Johnson, you just hit unmute and you should be good to go. Or if you want to type in the chat, if you can't talk, you can type it in the chat box or the Q&A like you did.
Ms. Johnson, if you go to the bottom of your screen and the left, should be a microphone that you could just hit unmute.
Somewhere at the top, Tom.
Depends on how you're looking at it.
I think she mentioned in the comments or in the Q&A that she was having some audio issues, so she may use the chat or Q&A feature.
Her question is, why can't it be set up like FiberNet? In what aspect, ma'am? The question is, why can't we have it where we have a choice? Moving to a single hauler allows you to hit the economies of scale to get the lower rates. That's the only structure you have moving to this type of thing. Otherwise, you have the more open contract. People go with wherever they want, like you have now.
Eric, I think there's a difference there too, that with FiberNet, we actually went into the business of being an ISP. And this isn't a situation where we want to go into the business of being a disposal service.
That would be true. Stephanie Davis says she doesn't have audio, but would like to express her opposition to taking away choice. Bill Collins.
Yeah, this is Bill Collins, 558 North Madison Street. What do you do about the folks that have already paid the current hauler that they have? And I'm already paid up for a year. You're talking about instituting this in March. What about those funds? And I noticed you only have one quote that's listed out, or one company that's listed out. Why weren't the other companies that were quoting on this listed out? Because you can't tell me the quote that you had last time you had a meeting are any good, because most quotes are only good for 30 days.
Answer your question on the quotes. There were two companies that responded to the RFPs. The one that's been presented is the lower price contract. Republic is the number 2 bid, and they were $1 more for trash, but slightly less for recycling than Grainger. When you combine them together, their rates were that Grainger was lower. And we also didn't know how many people. So what we knew trash, we didn't know how many people were going to take recycling. I apologize, Mr. Collins. Can you remind me what your first question, part of the question was?
First question is, if we've already paid our bills for the current hauler that we have now, and you're looking at instituting this in March, what happens to those funds?
Yeah, typically that money, from what I've seen and experienced, is that's money is refunded from the provider back to the residents.
Guaranteed?
As far as yes, and my experience, yes, that's how it has been handled.
And if it's not?
That's something we can tackle at that time. But that is, I think we're dealing with Ranger and Republic. These are, in waste management, they're three very well-known, reputable companies. But that is something we can tackle with them as well over the next few months if this is the track we go.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm not in agreement with this. This is, as that one individual said, that you're taking my choices away from me. If I've got issues with the hauler, I don't want to have to sit there and call somebody in City Hall to say I have got problems with the trash, and then they have to go call somebody else to get the issue resolved. I prefer to call the company straight away and eliminate the middleman. This way it eliminates confusion and things getting dropped. I also like the idea of being able to pick who I want. As far as ruling also on the fact of traffic on a road, there are some pretty good semis that go up and down Madison Street here, and I'm not quite sure. I'm not a civil engineer, but I'm not quite sure whether or not Madison Street is designed to handle all these heavy-duty trucks that are running up and down the streets. I mean, you're talking trash trucks that come up maybe 2, maybe 3 times at the most during the week on this road. And you're talking semi trucks that are going down here about 2 or 3 times a week also. And then during school years, as somebody brought up there about school buses, you got school buses that are racing up and down this road, bouncing like the devil. So I'm not one to believe the fact that you're doing this simply because of road repairs. That's just my opinion on this.
Thank you for your comments, Bill. Eric, do we have any other hands up or?
No one else, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so seeing and hearing none, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Any additional comments at this time from council?
Just a question that was brought up by the last gentleman. If somebody does have a question or a complaint or something they want to take up about trash, we're obviously saying they can call the city. Can they go direct to the contractor, or is it a must they go through the city?
The way it's usually set up, Ryan, is that it would go to the city staff, who would have the direct contact at the provider to get it resolved quickly. So it wouldn't be going into a call center there. We have specific contacts. We would have specific contacts at the provider to call and say, hey, we have a problem at this address and it needs to be resolved.
Okay, thank
you. I have one question. So the way that the ordinance is structured currently, would it allow us to, I know we had discussed having the billing be through the city, but given the current ordinance, would it allow us to decide to have billing through the provider, or would that require a change in the ordinance?
Sorry, I was muted. There's nothing in the ordinance that says how, I believe that how we will bill. That's more in the rates and regulations as we adopt and as the proposal that you adopt. So you have discretion on that if you so choose.
And I didn't notice it there, but within the RFP, did we get an option to have them bill in the current RFP, or was it the RFP only for us to bill?
It was requested only for us to bill. I believe both respondents did provide rates for them to bill. I do not have that right in front of me at this time, but I can get it.
Okay.
Any additional comments at this time?
I think Paul Schutte.
Paul's comment is 6:20. Skylar, just to voice my oppositions to this matter, this Zoom format is not the best way to handle a topic as volatile as this.
Right. Mr. Mayor, I can answer Jacob's question. Granger's fee was $1.75 more per residence to bill. For them to bill the residents.
Would that stay the same throughout the 5 years? Or would that possibly
Well,
fluctuate?
I mean, the gap would change based on the percentage, but it would be relatively.
So it would go up the, what, 3.5%?
Depending on which contract you chose, 3.5 for a 3-year contract, 5-year contract is 3%.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Republic's is like $1.10. It just depends on the threshold of each. So they're both over $1 a month more for the company to charge or to collect.
And then John, on the variability of that cost, so you referenced the leaf pickup, but can you help me understand the variables that we would consider here in terms of the potential for cost change? My understanding is that it's fairly limited. The administration is really the billing function, and then support if there are issues with the pickup service from residents. And then I think there's coordination if there's a request for a large item pickup. Is that directionally right?
At this point, you're absolutely correct. It's the bulk pickup, the setup, the everything to get everything going forward is very, we're not sure of at this point. So what we'd like to do is start out with the $2 per item and go from there. And at the end of the year, we can see if there's plenty of revenue, then we go from there. If there's a shortage, we go from there. It's just a matter of what do we do for the very first year. And we feel that the $2 is a good starting point.
Thank you. Sorry, but just to be a little bit more specific, there is no equipment that the city would need to purchase and manage that would then have a life cycle where we would have to do a replacement of expensive equipment.
That's correct.
If there was at that point, we would consider that, but at this point, we don't consider it. So I don't feel that's a factor.
I have one question from on container sizes. What's in the proposal is both a 96 and a 65 gallon container. Both companies bid the provision of both sizes, only one size for recycling. just a larger one for recycling. The smaller container size was not available for that.
All right, any additional comments at this time from council? All right, so the recommendation this evening is that the council adopt the ordinance as presented for the solid waste ordinance. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Was the motion by member Wolfersberger?
Yes.
Okay, and support by member Metzger?
Yeah.
We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Metzger,
As much as I would love to see that happen, too many people have contacted me and people would rather see it a vote of the citizens, and I have to agree with them. So I have to say no.
Councilmember Traver,
Echo the comment on the other side. I've had a lot of people supporting in favor of this reach out to me. I just wish they would come to these meetings. And we did look into having it on the ballot, which I think would have been great, and weren't able to do that. But all the things that I've seen, talked to people about, and looked into, I think this is the best thing for our city moving forward. And I vote yes.
Councilmember Underhill,
No, at this time.
Councilmember Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Councilmember Gates,
Yes.
and Councilmember McNeil.
No.
Motion carried, 4 yes and 3 no.
Thank you. Now that moves us on to item 10B under public hearings and subsequent council action, the zoning ordinance and city ordinance, chapter 121 to define hoop houses, commercial greenhouses, and define use standards. Trisha's going to brief us on this.
Okay, I'll get us started, and I believe Attorney Revor is on the call if we have any specific questions. Our attorney worked with city staff to develop this ordinance, which allows for cultivation of marijuana in semi-permanent structures. It sets the definition in our zoning ordinance, and we also have the ordinance for our city ordinance. So it's equal across the board that we have them in the zoning ordinance and our regular zoning ordinance. It went to Planning Commission at the regularly scheduled meeting on November 11th. There were a couple of questions that we resolved as far as the height of the fence that would be required around the area. So we developed and put that in the ordinance. So Planning Commission forwarded their recommendation of approval to City Council. I'd be happy to answer any questions or have David on the line to answer any questions.
Thank you. Attorney Revor, is there anything you'd like to add at this time?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm just checking in with any questions. If anybody has any, certainly I can give a background, but I think as the City Council in 2017 has made a policy decision for the cannabis industry, and we've continued to follow along with those policy decisions with ordinances. We are looking at the industry both within Marshall and Michigan, and a lot of development. And so In my opinion, this is a next step if the city council so decides. So I will await any questions that the council members may have.
Attorney Revore, did we, I still see the term semi-permanent used in this, but I don't see anything defined in the ordinance to what semi-permanent means.
Where on your packet are what page?
Sorry?
Within the ordinance?
What page?
No, in the background area, it says the purpose of this proposed ordinance amendment is to allow the cultivation of marijuana in semi-permanent structures.
So as we were constructing this, we were looking at exactly how are we trying to define what's being envisioned. And so we didn't actually define semi-permanent structures in the ordinances. Our research took us to the industry developments of hoop house and commercial greenhouse. And that's what we're defining. And so when we look at semi-permanent, the hoop house is a limited duration not to exceed 3 years. And that's on page 1 of the zoning ordinance. And it's not envisioned to renew that unless it should be the desire of the city council to amend the ordinance. But the commercial greenhouse is more of a permanent structure. And so there is no duration on that. So I think the background page is more of a working document on how we came to be where we're at. But it's actually the hoop house and commercial greenhouses that are being discussed and defined by ordinance.
I guess two questions. One is the height, the recommended height of fencing. I wasn't quite following from the planning discussion. It sounded like there was a indication of an 8-foot maximum, and then I wasn't quite following that. What is, if someone could share the recommendation for fencing heights?
Initially, the ordinance didn't have a specified height to surround these semi-permanent structures. Currently, in our zoning ordinance in the industrial district, we have an 8-foot maximum height for marijuana facilities. So we just kind of wanted to bring that to these semi-permanent structures and have it the same across the board. So when our public safety department approves a security plan for these facilities, it's going to be the same. It's an 8-foot fence that's going to be required.
Great, thank you. And then just one other quickly, the setbacks. Can you just recap the setback expectation, particularly related to residential?
Sure. So under the hoop houses, we have 1,500 feet from the residential structure, 250 from the road right-of-way center line, and 50 feet from any rear or side property line. The setbacks for the commercial are the same as under section 3.1.12D. And that is because that's more of a commercial greenhouse and structurally more sound, I would say, and not of a temporary nature. So we're trying to be somewhat, what do I want to say, having residences in mind regarding these structures.
Great, thank you.
All right, any additional questions at this time before we open up the public hearing? All right, hearing none, we will open up the public hearing for zoning ordinance and city ordinance chapter 121 to define hoop houses and commercial greenhouses and define use standards. If you would like to speak on this evening, please state your name and address for the record. You will have 5 minutes to do so. Just indicate you would like to speak by either raising your hand or commenting in the chat function.
Mr. Adams, you can unmute yourself.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello, Barry, we can hear you.
Okay. It's interesting that, again, local government feels that it has to regulate the individual activities of Americans, especially in the production of a plant. Are you going to start regulating the production of cabbage or carrots or squash? If you go back to 1972, there's a case called People versus John Sinclair. And in there, Justice Kavanaugh made the candid admission that the government has no business telling individual Americans what it can or can't do when it comes to what they eat, drink, or smoke in their own home. This is again an overreach. The almost pathologic need to regulate things that really don't need regulating is something that should be concerning to us Americans, and maybe we should start viewing it as something that moves into some sort of species of psychopathology. You know, once the plant gets normalized, I mean, when it became legal, there was no big change in the wind. Things just went on as usual, and things are still going on as usual. And I think the balloon that might be busting here is the attempt to co-opt the commercial production of cannabis through corporate forms, through corporate vehicles, when people will realize that they can, in fact, easily grow these plants themselves and save a lot of money. But this need to regulate things that really don't need to be regulatable is a disturbing concern. You know your history about cannabis in this country. The first laws in the country forced farmers to grow the cannabis plant. So if you really want to learn about how the government deals with information and how it disseminates information to the public and how it tries to deceive the public, look at the history of the cannabis plant in America. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Barry. Any additional comments this evening? See, we have Mike Beck raising his hand. Eric, if you could let him in, please.
You're good to go, Mike.
Thank you, Eric. Council members, Mike Beck. I am the Director of Community and Government Relations for NPM Common Citizen, and I attended the Planning Commission meeting when they reviewed and had their questions and went over the ordinance. I must say, I'll basically say the same thing I mentioned to the Planning Commission. I believe Attorney Revor and city staff have put together what I would call a pretty hardy ordinance. It's one of the more robust ones out there. There's a lot that folks in the industry will have to do. There's a lot going forward under the special land use permitting process and getting back in front of the Planning Commission and all of those tenants that have to be addressed for a company to go forward. But I do give a lot of credit to the team that put this ordinance together. It's a tough one, but I think it's a solid one. And we at NPM think it will add revenues and jobs to the city. And we're pretty excited about that if we're lucky enough to get through the process. And we would hope that the council would take the Planning Commission's recommendation and approve the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mike. we have any additional comments this evening?
Anything else, Mr. Mayor?
All right, seeing and hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Any additional comments by council at this time? All right, so hearing none, the recommendation is that the council consider to approve the zoning ordinance text amendment and amendment to chapter 121, commercial marijuana, to define hoop houses and commercial greenhouses and define use standards for same.
So move.
Or
A motion from member Traver, support from member Metzger. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member Gates,
Yes.
member McNeil,
Yes.
member Metzger,
yes.
member Traver.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us on to public hearing item 10B, the obsolete property rehabilitation exemption.
I'd make a motion to recuse Joe Karen as an employee of the public hearing Schuler's Restaurant.
Support.
And with that said, I think I'll just follow right through and continue on. The public hearing today is.
We need to have a vote.
Oh, sorry.
Not so fast, Nick.
I know, I'm trying to ramble right through this.
Member Gates,
Yes.
member McNeil,
Yes.
member Traver, or yeah,
Yes.
member Traver, member
Yes.
Metzger,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
and member Wolfersberger.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, this public hearing has to do with considering the property rehabilitation exemption request for the redevelopment of the second floor of Schuler's Restaurant. And the rehab is approved. It will allow Schuler's to invest and provide 7 new apartments, which would be wonderful. With that said, do we have any conversation? Tom, would you like to help us out, or is Sue on the line?
Sue is on the line, but Nick, I'd be glad to help you out too.
Okay.
This is probably I think the 3rd or 4th time we've talked about this as you've gone through the process of approving the district. And then now you're at the point where you actually look at approving the actual exemption. Council did this several years ago for Grand River in the redevelopment of the Cronin building. So this is in similar fashion. The stuff that would help make the redevelopment of the second floor more cost effective. The second floor is, I'd say, functionally obsolete, tough, but it's not in any useful shape for this purpose. So this act provides the ability for a property owner to receive an exemption off their taxes for a period of up to 12 years. And that was what is being requested from Schuler's. And that would allow them to, from a pro forma standpoint, make the redevelopment worthwhile. Their consultant, Bruce Johnston, who we all know well, who's worked with the city in the past, has also worked with our assessor, provided information from the pro forma. The assessor signed off on the request and indicated that it would be a $400,000 to $450,000 increase in true cash value. So the increase in taxable value would be $200,000 to $225,000. That would not come into place until the exemption is over 12 years. So if you approve the exemption request tonight, you would be approving it for 12 years. It would go in place after 2021. So the 2021 value for the second floor would remain constant for those 12 years. So that's something Ed has worked with. He did it for the Cronin Building, and I know John has been reviewing the information all along as well. Sue Dameron is on, and if you have any questions specifically for her, anything for me, I'm happy to answer. Sue, if you want to say anything, all you have to do is unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that we've talked about it a couple of times before, like you've said, Eric, and so I'm certainly here to help answer any questions if there are any. And we certainly appreciate you considering this tonight, so that hopefully we can move forward with this project and add some more housing to our great downtown. So thank you.
Great. With that said, we'd like to open the public hearing. Please remember that you are allowed up to 5 minutes to speak and state your name and address. With that said, Eric, can you help facilitate that?
Yes, ma'am.
Audience participation, please.
No comments yet. No hands up.
Okay. With that said, we will close the public hearing. Is there any more comments regarding this request? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the request for the 12-year Oprah exemption for the second floor of the Schuler's building located at 115 South Eagle Street.
So moved.
So move. Support.
Trish, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Traver,
Yes.
Councilmember Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
and Member Metzger.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you, Member Metzger. That moves us to item 11A under old business, the City Council Rules of Procedure. Tom, if you could brief us on this change.
Yes, at your last meeting, you adopted updated rules and procedures and also how to deal with the remote meetings that we are forced to have at this time. So there's changes in here. The city attorney looked this over, but I would like to recommend two, I think, minor changes, but I think it really helps the questions. Find it here. New pages. Yeah, the wrong one. In section 2.6, it talks about cancellation of meetings, meeting cancellations in 2.6. I would suggest that we add on the end of that sentence, or lack of business. You can cancel for lack of quorum, inclement weather, or lack of business. I would suggest that change be made. And then in section 14.2.3, this is I would suggest the language of a request to comment may be made through the chat function, raising of the hand icon, or by telephone by entering *9 and state your name when called upon to do so. This gives the procedure for remote meetings. I don't think any of us like this, and I don't disagree with Mr. Adams on this at all, is we're forced into this as time. If it's not dealt with in lame duck here, a lot of this expires in January, but I think the legislature is going to be doing something. But this will get where our rules are as up to date as the laws are. I can't say what will happen in January if I'll have to be back with another change. But so I would ask you to adopt these rules and procedures with these changes. I'll be willing to answer any questions.
Any questions about the two changes from our previous changes? Hearing none, the recommendation is to adopt the revised city council rules of procedure.
So moved. Support.
We have a motion from member Metzger, support from member McNeil. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
and Member Underhill.
Yeah.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, under reports and recommendations, item 12A, we have the transformer purchase for Cresco Labs. Ed, if you can brief us on this purchase, I would appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to start. Ed and I'll be tag teaming. So Ed, if you want to unmute. Over the weekend, there's been a lot of changes that occurred. Nick Fallon from Cresco is also available for questions. Cresco has a very escalated, faster schedule than we had anticipated. And we have been working all day today to get transformers there to meet their schedule, which is quicker than what we originally had here. We had the recommendation to go with Solomon, who actually has provided the transformers for MPM facility. We're finding out some different information from Solomon that we need to research. Also, we were able to reach out to the 40 members of the Michigan Municipal Electric Association and the 132 members of the AMP organization to see if we could find transformers that can meet this escalated schedule. So what we'd like to ask for something which is very different. We would like you to allow us, if you would be willing to approve the amount that's in the report, and allow us to try to work with these vendors to find out who can get these transformers here. It's a little different request than we've had. Waiting, they actually, and Cresco would like these transformers on site by February 14th, which is about 8-9 weeks off, maybe 10. So we are scurrying. We're working with Cresco's contractor. They've been trying to find him also for us today. There's been a lot of conversations with Solomon, but we want to be able to meet the schedules that Cresco has. And I'm not sure if Nick wants to say anything. Eric, if you would maybe allow him. And then Ed, why don't you go ahead and pick up any pieces I may have left through that sort of jumble of schedules.
Now or after Nick?
Well, if Nick wants to go first, you're unmuted, Nick. You're good to go.
Hi, you guys can hear me? Just confirm.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we had worked with Ed and Tom on just trying to figure out the timing of and who would pay for the transformers. We really liked the proposal that you guys had come to us with. And after we spoke several months ago, we kind of locked that time frame into our schedule. We're trying to get this facility up and running as fast as possible. It means more jobs sooner, more revenue, everything. that I think we're, both Cresco and Marshall are pretty much fully aligned on. We found out on Friday that the time frame for when those transformers would be available from Solomon was quite a bit later than we had initially planned for. So yeah, we're hoping to give Tom and Ed the flexibility to possibly go with an alternate route of there's another utility yard somewhere nearby that might be able to get us the transformers on the same time frame that we're set up for. Happy to answer any questions that come up in terms of the time frame and what we're trying to do, but the whole project is about electricity and getting that set up, and so it's important that we try to meet these time frames. We've been paying a lot of overtime just to make sure we hit the schedule. So want to make sure that the critical equipment can be there on time.
So was this schedule set several months ago?
Yeah, the schedule hasn't changed terribly. We have shared that with the, Tim Muster for sure. Ed, I'm sure, has seen some of it. Yeah, it hasn't changed significantly. I mean, maybe here and there, we've actually are a little bit ahead of schedule because it's been really good weather, but it hasn't changed significantly.
What's, if I may, this Ed, what's complicated this is, and I don't like to blame it on COVID, but it is, typically we would expect to be able to get these transformers, and this is what we originally communicated with Cresco, in 10 to 12 weeks. When we got the bids back from the RFP, just back on, November 20, let's see, what was that? November 20th, 27th. We looked at the lead times on them, and they had almost doubled, and spoke with several of the vendors, and again, they're down on employees because of COVID related issues, and they're also having difficulties acquiring the copper and the materials to construct these transformers, and there's still quite a demand out there. So we did talk with, go ahead.
What's a typical time frame, Ed, upon placing an order? I mean, is it usually this long, or is it like 3 to 4 weeks, or
10 to 12 weeks, and the ones what we're seeing now is 16 to 18 weeks, and we had one bid on the sheet that was 30 to 40 weeks.
Right.
And we fully appreciate Cresco's need for the transformers. There was 3 transformers at the site previously. 2 of those have failed, and there's 1 left. And besides that, the existing transformers were way undersized. Basically, the old Campbell Soup building was set up for about 4,000 amps of maximum load, and Cresco's bringing in anticipated loads of up to 9,000 amps. So they need 3 transformers, 3,000 kVA transformers.
if you can't get those times, are the ones that are broken fixable?
No, they're too small. The one is 1,000 kVA. 2 of them are 1,000 kVA, and the other one that's in place is 2,500 kVA, but it's been there for 20 years, and usually it's almost met its expected life. So
Yeah, I was just thinking of short term, trying to get you through till you could get your transformers.
yeah, we looked at several different options there, and the way Cresco is going to come on, they're going to have a pretty quick full, and I'll let Nick and tell them what the plan is, but there's going to have a pretty full demand need for electricity.
Yeah, and we're hoping to come on, if we have to delay this, it's probably about a 2-month delay in hiring about 200 jobs. And of course, yeah, if the sooner we can get online, the sooner the higher electric usage, et cetera. So the Solomon plan, if we go with Solomon, it does delay that, but I'd love for Tom and Ed to have the option to investigate and possibly purchase these 3 transformers that we found nearby that are in a yard. It might be a little bit more money. They haven't finished investigating, but it would allow for the project to complete on time, hiring to start in a couple months, and then keep going through until we complete in July.
So just to be clear, the city's footing the bill on the transformers, right?
Up to 133,000 at this point, yes.
Right, and yeah, because there's some huge differences in these costs that are just not I mean, that's not even usable right now.
Right.
So when you're asking for some help with this, what if you came in at 190,000?
Nick?
You know, I think Cresco would be willing to cover the overage. Time for us is probably just as important as cost. You know, the idea in a normal project like this, the builder would just purchase the transformers. That's what I've been told happens 90% of the time. But we love the deal that comes with this. I think it's better support, better integration with you guys, with Marshall. I do think that Cresco would be open to covering some of that overage or possibly all of it, depending on what it was. But we'd like to be able to consider the faster.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm sure you do need those, and you sound like those. So
yeah. Well, just to give you a feel, we asked for the specs on these three that were found, and we have not received those yet. That pricing is roughly 142,000 plus freight, but we don't know exactly where they're located. All this came in this afternoon. We put out our plea on Friday night to anybody in the actually 9-state area to help us out. And so it was just the timing of this. We want to have Cresco come on. As Nick mentioned, the electric load is large, but we also want to have the reliability in these transformers. They do not want to have failure. They want to have good, reliable power. And that's why a lot of the growers have come to Marshall because of that. So again, what I'm asking for your approval is to spend up to this amount. It may be with Solomon, it may be with another company, but we just need to approve this so that we can get something ordered or delivered this to meet the timeframes of Cresco.
up to the 133,000.
If you would, yes.
Okay, and then just one more question: is the Cresco's need for all three transformers immediate upon opening?
And Nick, could you handle that one, because we did talk about that?
I could. If we receive 2 of the transformers by February 15th, we could make up some of the time from a schedule standpoint. But to open the facility, we do need all 3 coming in. So, you could get 2 quickly. The third could come 2 weeks later. I think we could then still hit our time frame. And I'm hoping that maybe the council can approve the 133, but also give Tom, Ed, and myself the ability to strike a partnership on if there was an overage to get, the transformers faster.
I would like to know what that is. I mean, if it's going to be more cost for the city, that's kind of relative.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, when you were looking, you said it was, for the ones that we saw, it's not ideal because it's 2 new and 1 refurbished. So that 1 refurbished is probably one you'd really want to look at.
Yeah.
But with that, you said that was 145 with freight. So
no, plus freight.
Excluding.
Right.
It's probably 15,000 of freight, something like that. I mean, I don't know. You guys might know that better than I would.
Not sure where they're located, so that's what's hard putting this whole deal together today.
It's moving fast. Yeah. We're trying to get online as fast as possible, I think. And I feel the support from you guys, but we wouldn't want to wait a few weeks just to go back to ask for 10,000 more. In fact, if that were the conversation, I think Cresco would probably just pick it up just because we want to be online as fast as possible here. I do think that I'd love the opportunity to be able to have that conversation with Tom and just be able to, have some sort of preliminary approval, or I don't know what the process would be.
Yep. We're glad you're here.
We're glad we're here too. It's been a great place to work.
Thank you.
All right, any additional comments at this point from the council?
I guess I would like, if there's an explanation of how that would work. Obviously we're not in the habit of just giving a blank check. So if maybe, I don't know if Tom, if you can address how, what sort of leeway you need beyond the 133,000.
Tonight, I'm just asking you for the 133,425 that we had recommended with Solomon. And then we would hopefully, resolve the numbers with freight and everything. And then we can let you know. It just, you won't be having a meeting for a while, but we really need to get these either ordered or on a truck. So all we're asking for is the amount that was originally submitted by Solomon.
Can I ask one question? I'm not sure if I'm still, I'm not. Tom, if we decided to go with the 145 option, what would the process be to get that approved? Let's pretend that Cresco picked up all of the overage, or we decided to split it since we both benefit, kind of thing. How would we go about that if we don't have some ability to sort of move from here? Would we wait for the next council, or how would that work?
This is a first for us, so.
Same. I just want to know. I'm not trying to be pushy.
Really?
This Ed, I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to resolve this at that 133 level.
That'd be great, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the list of bids, and it looks like 4 of them would be within that range. 4 or 5 of those would be within that range. That feels appropriate to me for the city to be approving the cost for the agreed, the expedited bid with Solomon. If there's discovery that there's there's an opportunity to shorten that timeline by incrementally spending more, Nick, that is where I would look to Cresco to do that work to close that gap.
Sounds good. Yeah, I understand. Thanks, Michael. I mean, I trust Tom and Ed to sort of negotiate and work on both our behalf. It sounds like we can get it done. And Tom, that my phone is always available, so we can work through this as it's probably over the next day or two. I think we have to probably make a decision that fast.
I would agree.
Well, I would say, I'm in favor. I think we need to do whatever we can to help facilitate this. I would just caution that we make sure, and I know you will, but make sure that, whatever it is that we purchase is of comparable quality to the Solomon. I don't pretend to know, what the quality of the refurbished transformer would be versus one that's not refurbished, but I would just caution that we don't, invest in something for the sake of speed that then we're going to have to go ahead and change out sooner than we would otherwise.
That's why Ed needs to take a look at the specs and see what they did on the refurbishing. And we have bought refurbished smaller transformers in the past.
Okay.
We'll keep you updated.
All right, so then it sounds like the recommendation this evening would be to approve awarding the purchase of 3 new 3,000 kVA transformers for Cresco Labs development project in the amount of $133,425. And that would be approved by the electric director and city manager.
So moved.
Support.
All right, so we have a motion by member McNeil, support by member Metzger. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Gates,
Yes.
member McNeil,
Yes.
member Metzger,
Yes.
member Traver,
Yes. Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. And thank you, Nick, for joining us this evening and explaining the process. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great working with you guys. I appreciate the council listening to this. Tom, Ed, appreciate all the hustle the last couple days. Let's talk first thing in the morning. Let's try to figure out, what the right path is for this. Appreciate everyone. I'll go on mute now.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, that moves us to item 12B on the social district changes. Eric, if you could brief us on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As discussed earlier this year, council suggested creating an ad hoc committee to look at making the social district more effective, talk about the issues, explore options. The group met on November 20th and is recommending two major changes to the social district. One is to move the time from 7 days per week from the current Friday, Saturday, Sunday on the different hours per day to a noon to 10, 7 days a week. And then the other one is to expanding the commons area, which would allow consumption in this area all the way from to include Michigan Avenue from Park all the way down to Exchange Street. There's a map included in your packet. There are some other proposals that they would like to explore, specifically creating parklets in front of some businesses. So like if the Copper, I'm picking on them for right now, could use their parking space to put up tables. That's something that we are talking to MDOT about and dealing with those issues. The direction I received from is that we need to take that to DDA first before we bring that back to you. So that's something that does need to go to DDA. But and then potentially something more permanent in the parking lot in the south and north Golden Block areas. But for you tonight, it would be the two changes that would authorize extension of the time and the location of the commons area. This would allow us to, we hope, and other improvements are to like limit alley closures and allow some different more permanent improvements that will help make the social district more effective. And that was the consensus of the committee. I know Councilmember Traver and Mayor Karen were on that call. Actually, Ryan was in Florida on vacation and he participated, so we appreciated that. So if there's anything I can answer, I'm more than happy to.
I'm curious, this may be nitpicky. I'm just curious why the district goes north to Mansion Street on Jefferson when it doesn't do that on Eagle.
That I didn't change that part from the original. Those were on the streets were the original layouts. If you want to add that section of Eagle, we could do that too. But those were specific areas where licensees were. Potentially could be things in the streets near them. So that South Eagle is on there in front of Schuler's and by the coach.
Right.
North Eagle, there is nothing up there that would be a potential licensee, but that could be easily added if you were so inclined, Scott.
No, I guess I'm more curious between the Ameritech building and the Fountain Clinic. I'm not sure which of those would become an establishment. But
no, it's more as the tie-in mics and kind of create that area where you could have if council so were inclined down the road at some point to say, hey, we want to create a street, we're going to close the street down for this event type of thing, and you could have the social district out in the street on that whole stretch from say Mansion down to Green.
Gotcha.
Just providing that space. It doesn't. Those specific areas on the streets only get closed if you close the streets. So
did the committee seek or get feedback from non-bar, non-restaurant downtown businesses on having having alcoholic consumption down Michigan Ave?
There was feedback from MEDA. MEDA's talked to people since the creation of the social district. The committee didn't actively go out at that at this time and gone out and solicit additional. The copper was there. MEDA staff were there. And that's one of the things that they've heard different requests from people was to expand to include the Michigan Avenue so people could take their drink and kind of window shop as they go. That is a request that MEDA had made originally when we started this whole discussion. But that aspect of reaching out to the other businesses is specifically, we were looking at it from the standpoint of changing the parking spaces or the parking lots at this point.
And is there anything that would need to change in terms of signage, or is it all still kept within the same signage area that we've got marked?
No, we would definitely need to change signage. We need to change out the time and then also add some locations, signs. And that's something that MEDA has paid for with the initial run. And that's something that I would be working with Amy, Chris, and Jim to get the additional signs ordered.
Okay. And then I guess from a public safety perspective, have there been any issues with the social district or common area that would cause us to pause before we expanded hours or geography?
The only issues I've heard are more have been on like cigarette butts and cleanliness issues that we are working to address that with. I know MEDA's been talking to the establishments about making sure they clean up. But we did take into account also that's something we need to look at as we make improvements, as you know, additional trash cans in some places, things like that. I am not aware of any other problems from a public safety standpoint, though.
Just a point of clarification with this scenario, would people be able to walk into other businesses with open containers?
That is completely discretion of the business, what they allow in, what they don't allow in. If I wanted to walk in to Handle and Hinge and they were okay with it, I could. I couldn't walk into the Copper with the drink I bought from Schuler's. You can't take it into a licensed establishment. But the specific businesses, that's their discretion. Some of them, some comments made had said that some wanted that option. So as people were meandering around downtown, others I'm sure will not want it.
But how would they know that, Eric, if they're just casually walking and step into a store? How would they know that was a cocktail-friendly store or not?
I think that's something we can work with MEDA on, Nick, as maybe some type of signage that says, hey, no drinks allowed inside, or.
I mean, yeah, that, keep your drinks outside.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then that's also something as we work with the establishments who sell, we have some information, pamphlets that can be provided. That's something that can be incorporated in there that,
I think they would need. And maybe the route, maybe the social district itself, so they don't step outside that.
Yeah, I know MEDA had made some of the pamphlets up like that and had distributed them. But this would obviously be changed now.
So is the expectation here that expanding it to 7 days a week will expand participation by the establishments?
I think it's to make it more of a consistent time and place, rather than the 4 to 10 and the noon to 10 and then the noon to 8 that we have now. In whether I'm coming or going, whether it's a Friday or Thursday, Councilmembers Traver, Mayor Karen, if there's anything you want to correct or add on to this, is I think they wanted to provide as many options as they could for people.
Yeah, one thing I liked about that is it doesn't narrow that window of time for people to congregate. So it's possibly less likely that you would have a larger group of people together, which I still don't support the larger gatherings. So if we're able to spread that out across 7 days, different pockets of people could enjoy the district at different times and not be forcing them all within specific time windows, time frames.
This is also just an extremely challenging time for any food service establishment, being closed again for, an additional 12 days after this 3-week closure. Speaking from experience working in a restaurant here in Marshall, it's been we've experienced huge losses. We had to just recently lay off 3 more of our salaried managers. And the takeout business right now is not even coming close to, covering costs for a lot of these businesses. But if this is something that we can do at this point to, help increase and also encourage the outside and social distancing to keep people safe, I certainly think it's a positive. And also, we can keep in mind that, we always have the ability to adjust this in the future if for some reason it's not working. So, those are just my comments. Any additional comments at this time? All right, hearing none, the recommendation is to adopt the changes proposed by the ad hoc committee for the social district.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion by member Gates, support by member McNeil. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
member Metzger,
Yes.
member Traber,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
and member Gates.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 12C, under reports and recommendations, the solid waste proposals. Eric, if you could brief us on these, please.
Let me go ahead and start, and then Eric will get into details. What tonight we're asking is really 3 things from you, is to accept the bid from Grainger, direct the staff and city attorney to put a contract together to present back to you for final approval at your January meeting. And then also adopt the rules, which really play into what the contract says. So Eric, I don't know if I stole all your thunder, but Eric has put a tremendous amount of time into this. And so I'm going to let him run with each of those portions of it.
Oh, I'm happy if you steal my thunder on that one, Tom. Yeah, we went over a lot of the stuff already earlier tonight, so and not in an effort not to repeat myself too much. But we did have the 2 bids put in by the 3 current providers. As in your packets, you see Grainger is the low bid on the trash side. They provided the lowest increase over the different years of the contract. They originally had a contamination issue with recycling. If it was above a certain rate, there would be a fee. They repealed that from their proposal. They took that out. So all in all, you look at it from every way we could look at it from what we know right now, Grainger was the cheaper provider. As it turns out, they have a majority of the town right now from customer wise that we're aware of. But notwithstanding, this would be the most cost-effective way we can implement the service. Whether you want to allow the other services like the bulk item, that's something we don't have to allow, but they gave us a price. They also gave us a price on the large item pickup, which Christy has that information. She can use it as she does on an annual basis. And Republic was slightly lower on that. So that's something that can be separately. If you look over the rest of them, you can see over the years, obviously with the percentages, Granger is going to become more cheap, more cost effective over the years. So looking at the rates, looking at a consistency, we are recommending that the bid from Granger be accepted and to direct us to move forward with that. Also, in the packet, you have proposed rates and regulations, which, as I mentioned, was built off the 1,500 to 1,999 residents. So I think it covers everything in there about bulk items. It covers the service. It talks about the opt-outs, as we mentioned already. Late fees is consistent language with what we already have. Really, we tried to cover everything that has been requested as best outside of not doing it. Obviously, that was an option we could have taken, but by doing it, we tried to cover everything we could think of. I'm happy to answer any questions. I will say one thing is, as I mentioned earlier, Scott Truman from Granger is on the line. I think Mike from left. But Scott's plan was to split Marshall into two, basically, and have, be in town for 2 days. So one side of town would be one day, whatever the side is, how they split it up, and they would work with us on that. The other side would be the other day. And then they would flip flop weeks. So 1 week you'd be on, say, the north side, and then the second week on the south side for recycling. So that's something we will work with them to structure the routes and get information out to the residents. But I'll say is that both companies are, I've worked with Republic, I've had Granger in the past and other places. They're both good companies, and we've been happy working with either of them.
I received a couple questions on social media. Thought I could throw them out now. One is about, will I be charged additional fees if I have items that do not fit in my container? Say it's a box full of wrapping paper from Christmas or a birthday.
Right now, it's just what's in the container is anticipated. So there is a price for extra bags, but that's something we have not included in the rates and regulations at this point. But maybe if you're so inclined.
Second question, for those that have a condo or apartment downtown, can they opt in for recycling only since that's not available to them?
No, we had to, as part of the proposal, they had to provide the trash to get the recycling.
And then one person heard that if they opt out, they're no longer able to opt back in. Is that true?
That is not true.
Okay. Okay. I guess I'd want to know what that fee is then if somebody had an extra bag of garbage sitting on top of their garbage can, what they would be assessed. I think we may need to make that known.
I have a question. Do we know how signing up for new service would work? So would somebody be able to call, make contact with City Hall, and if they're new to town, sign up for trash service at the same time that they sign up for electric and fiber net?
Yeah, that would be the intention, Jacob, is that once you call City Hall, new to town, you just, and that's what we have a lot of people ask us, I want to sign me up for all your services. They go through electric, water, sewer. We're like, who's trash? And right now they basically say, you're going to call one of these companies. So we would just add that on. How we're anticipating is the form would go out to everybody in town, current customers, and that would have them the ability to sign off on the opt-out. So that's how that would be handled. Right now, Ryan, the number I see is $1.50 per bag, extra bag. But like as I mentioned, Scott Truman is on, and I unmuted and I allowed him to talk. So Scott, is there anything you want to add on the extra bag?
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, the extra bag fee that we've listed is $1.50. In regards to the specific comment or question from the resident, about a extra box with wrapping paper. It's kind of a Granger discretion that, especially around the holidays, we kind of understand that people are going to have heavier trash because they're entertaining and they have gifts and such. We tend to look the other way on that. You know, in a municipal situation like that, we would look the other way. And then if it became something that was a habitual problem, then I would address with the city. As I've expressed to Eric and I'll share with all of you tonight, we're looking for long-term partnerships. I'm not looking to get in disagreements with your residents. You know, I've listened through this evening and through public comments, and I've experienced this before. And I recognize that moving forward, there'll be some challenges, and it'll absolutely take hard work from Granger, you know, to prove to the residents that we're worthy of having this contract with you.
In terms of the timeline for recycling, if I recall right, when we originally looked at this, Granger did not have recycling services available. Are you comfortable with, if we proceed and we have everything in place by March, would recycling be available immediately?
Yes, it absolutely will.
Yeah, I think, Michael, what you remember is they gave us a second option. In their first bid, they had recycling, but they also had a blue bag recycling, which allowed you to throw it in the trash, a bag, as a way to cut the recycling costs, because then they wouldn't have a separate container. So that was an option that we didn't even discuss this time.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just real quick. How will the recycling opt-in work? Will everybody who wants recycling have to reach out? Is that?
No, we went as it's being proposed, this is all an opt-out. So basically, you're going to you would get a form. Every resident will get a form that's, you know, eligible and would say, yes, I don't want trash, I don't want recycling, and that would just need to be returned to the city. So if they wanted trash but not recycling, they would just opt out of recycling.
If the form is not returned, are they automatically in and they're going to start receiving the containers?
That's how we have planned on it at this point.
Okay.
Will people be well aware of that?
We will do our best, Nick. It's going to go out in the utility bills. We'll do our best to publicize that aspect and let them know. So yeah, we will, to the best of our ability, we will make that aware.
Will it be in the advisor? Just curious, because this is kind of big for the city.
Yeah, we'll make sure we do information. And I know that working with Scott presented some transition information that will go out to all residents as we get towards transitioning. So that all that will be included as well.
Good, thanks.
I'm wondering, I don't know who's the best to answer this, maybe Scott, since we have you here, but just about recycling. You know, one criticism we have of recycling is that a lot of it ends up in the landfill. Maybe Scott, since we have you, you can tell us a little bit about your recycling and even whether there's a mechanism in the contract to ensure that the recycling can actually end up being recycled.
I'm happy to answer that. I can absolutely guarantee, and Granger will guarantee that, we do not landfill recycling unless the contamination rate is so high that we can't sort it. The national average on single stream contamination rate needs to be 8% or below. Single stream recycling, believe it or not, is not one of the larger contamination problems in recycling. A lot of it comes down to it's more business wise that happens. So understand that single stream works is we're going to provide every resident who wants recycling with a cart. So then that's going to get transported to our facility where we're going to put it on a truck and take it to our vendor. And then they do a manual sort. So if you've ever seen a MRF, it's where the belts are going and the magnets pull out the metal and some things are hand picked out. I mean, that's how it's sorted. Does that help answer your question?
Hey,
Good,
Scott,
thank
you want to talk about your experience with that other community with the contamination issue?
Yeah, there's another community that is almost identical in size to Marshall that I've worked with. And that was a community that we were having quite a bit of contamination issues with. Working with that city, with their city manager and with their council, we diligently worked together as a municipality and as a business and communicated the do's and don'ts, if you will, for recycling. In that, prior to that, when we had started recycling in this community, we had never had a clean load of recycling prior to our collaborative effort. Once we started that, which was summer of 19, by September, every load we brought in was clean, and we've never had to landfill a load of recycling from that community. So I think the point of this is, and that's something where I did remove the contamination fee with the understanding that we would work together in a partnership to educate the residents of Marshall about proper recycling. Granger's willing to hold recycling workshops, if you will, where we'll meet and talk to residents. We have literature that we share on that. The recycling process is part of the mailing literature that we share with the residents so that they have a firsthand experience. Of course, our website lists all sorts of what you can recycle and what you can't recycle. It's a great place for information.
Scott, I have a question because I know we're going to get asked this question at City Hall. Is those people that currently have your service or formerly had Scooter's service, they would still be able to use those containers, and probably your first rollout will be those that have the other two vendors. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, our intention will be to give everybody a container. The Scooters containers we have in the market, we've slowly been phasing those out. So I would hope that those would still be in good standing, as it's just been a few months. But yeah, our intention will be to bring Granger carts to every resident. And that's really the 8 weeks I need to be able to order the carts and get them in time.
Scott, you probably answered this. Where are you located?
We're based in Lansing, but we have facilities in Jackson, Alma, and Cedar Springs. We're a little newer to the Battle Creek area. I hope someday that we have a facility, somewhere in that area. We've been the municipal hauler for the city of Albion for the last 5 years, though, if that helps for proximity. Excuse me, the last 3 years. That was a new ordinance in that community. Our 3 years just expired. We signed a 10-year contract this year.
Okay. Was it a better rate, just out of curiosity?
The services are different in Albion than what Marshall has requested. So the Albion pays more, so it's just different services.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any additional comments at this time for either Eric or Scott?
I'll share that we're excited for this opportunity. We're committed to proving to you and to the residents that we're going to work hard. As somebody who works in sales, real work begins after the sale happens. And I want you to know that we know this is just the beginning, and we'll be here to work hard for you should you accept us as your hauler.
Thank you.
I want to add a comment that I think I'm comfortable with Granger and everything that we're agreeing to so far tonight. With Republic, I had a concern. I've been reading that they are under negotiations with the city of Battle Creek to take over the waste management contract, and that's a pretty big contract. So I worry about what that would do to their service in our community. If we were not to adopt the ordinance that we did earlier tonight, and then even if they were the low bidder tonight, we would be considering Republic. That would be a big concern with them getting the Battle Creek contract and then ours. That's a lot for them to undertake. So I'm happy to see it's Granger.
I just wanted to make a comment regarding the billing and the billing fee. I do like the convenience of, residents, especially new residents to town, being able to make a single phone call to this city. I do like the idea of, issues coming through the city, because I think that will help us to keep tabs on what any issues may be with our hauler that we're contracted with. I would just put out there and sort of challenge to city staff for us to think about that fee, even though it's only a $2 fee, but there will be a perception that, the city is out to make money off of this contract. And so it does concern me a little bit when we say, well, it's $2 now, but it may go up. I would just challenge that maybe we could, as we set those rules, we could say, that fee is not going to rise any more than that, 3% that's laid out in the contract for the rest of the services. And I'm sure we could find it in the budget to make that commitment to our citizens, and that might just make it feel a little less open-ended.
For me, I think it would have been the breakdown of what that $2 encompassed.
I agree, Nick. Yeah, more specificity would help.
There, which we should have been there, but we should have had a breakdown of what, instead of arbitrarily saying $2. Well, for what? I mean, we don't know the answer to that, I don't think.
We can speak to some of that, right? Isn't it? Didn't we break down a person and a number of set hours that we'd be devoting to this responsibility? So it's salary.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that cost is going to be going into billing staff, customers, staff dealing with customer issues. That's what John was saying. His projection for the first year is we can do that for $2. We have a staff member identified who will handle like the complaints, but then John's staff will be doing the billing for it. So just putting all those costs in.
What we're going to do is we're going to handle this like a utility where the costs are staying in one fund. So you'll be able to watch revenues and expenditures as we get into, it's a new venture, but and then every time you do budget, you can then be looking at, how is that fund doing? Now, again, for most of you, you'll only see about 3 months when you adopt the 21-22 budget. But again, it's over time, you'll be able to see, as John was mentioning, is if it's the fund is building, you can lower that $2. We don't want to, again, have any more deficit funds, because as a fund, if you're not collecting enough, you're going to have to then do a deficit elimination plan for similar to FiberNet. And so it might be better to, start with the $2 as we're recommending, and then analyze that as we move forward here, once we have some more facts on how this is going to be. So I would highly suggest you leave it there, and then let us, you in the future will be able to look at that fee and adjust it on an annual basis.
And I would expect your cost, since this is mostly somebody's time, so it's administrative cost. And I would expect that there's going to be a lot of incremental work near sort of the first quarter or so, where lots more people will be calling with questions. There's going to be challenges with how the billing works, the communication back and forth with Granger on exceptions for a bill for an individual. So I think that being cautious about adjusting that in the first budget cycle and waiting for a full annualized year where things start stabilizing at the end of that, the first full fiscal year for the city, to derive a more accurate rate would probably be good.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments at this time? All right, the recommendation is to accept the bid from Granger to provide solid waste services for a period of 5 years and to approve the proposed rules and regulations for the provision of solid waste services.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion from member Wolfersberger, support by member Traver. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Metzger,
Yeah, yes.
member Traver, member Underhill,
No.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member Gates,
Yes.
and member McNeil.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us on to item 12D, the Assistant Director of Electric Utility Salary and FiberNet Manager and IT Team Leader Salary Adjustment.
Mr.
Mayor,
Mayor.
if I could, we'd like you to accept or approve the rules and regulations that were presented.
Rules and what?
The rules and regulations, it was the last 2 pages of that report.
The motion included the rules and regulations.
Okay, my apology then. So let's move on.
All right, Tom, you're up.
Okay, thank you. There's 2 portions to the report that I'm presenting to you tonight. I'd like to take them separately if we can. The first one is the FiberNet Manager. What we would like to do is increase the salary and add duties to Mr. Smith's job, which would include be the IT team leader, where he would be monitoring our IT duties, also cybersecurity, and you as a council approve salaries. And Mr. Smith has been with us for 5 years, has excelled in all the jobs we've given him. And this is something that we need to make improvements to our IT. So I'm requesting you to, if you would approve an increase in his salary.
Because it's not in front of me, Tom, from what to what?
He's currently making 58,938.66 to 65.
This is FiberNet, right?
This additional salary would not come out of FiberNet. This would be coming out of the IT budget, which is shared by all users of the IT. It's an internal service fund. And Joe would be, that difference would come out of that fund.
And Tom, how I would articulate the change in responsibilities too is some of this is coming from responsibilities that Tracy Hall currently has, plus CRT provides for us as well. And the idea here is to consolidate some of those technology related services into one area, which makes sense to me. And I think we get more value from the team member being able to support those various technology functions.
Probably I skipped over that too quickly. Is currently Tracy will take the incoming call or problem and in most cases forward it on to CRT, and then we pay for hourly time for CRT to deal with the issue. We feel with Joe's expertise and knowledge, and he would be able to take care of a lot of those things that CRT would take care of. So we feel that this is something now with more and more IT needs.
So if one person was handling just taking a phone call and like a soft transfer to another area.
Was that a
Yeah.
question? I'm sorry.
I haven't finished, but is that right? That's the only responsibility that person had with the IT? The prior.
Yep. Basically, Tracy, she would, if someone needs a new password or she would do that. But if it was any type of technical setup, software issues, CRT handled that work for us.
Okay. So the responsibilities for that person was exceedingly minimal.
That is correct.
Okay.
Is there a projected savings of what we would not be paying CRT once he would take those responsibilities on?
We have not been able to figure that out yet. There will be that initial learning curve for Joe Smith to see those things, and we feel there will be a savings. It's just we can't put that right now. I think it'll be over time. CRT does a lot of the work with the police department, which they would continue to do because of the high levels of security that the state of Michigan and the federal government require. So initially, Joe would not be doing that amount of work, but again, we're going to have to just watch and see. Now, I want you to know his primary duties still will be the FiberNet system. That is, and then the secondary, if we're having a FiberNet problem, he will deal with that. And then the person with the laptop problem, they'll be secondary, but FiberNet still is his primary duties.
All right, any additional questions regarding the FiberNet manager and IT team leader? We'll take these separately. All right, so hearing none, the recommendation is to approve a $65,000 annual salary for the FiberNet manager and IT team leader effective January 4th, 2021.
Moved.
Support.
We have a motion by member Wolfersberger, and was it support by a member McNeil?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. And we'll do a roll call vote, please. Tricia, you're muted.
Member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member Gates,
Yes.
member McNeil,
Yes.
and member Metzger.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. The second request that I have, as part of your strategic goals, you requested us to look at succession planning, and specifically for the Director of Electric Utility. We have went out and advertised with no success for an assistant. We then scaled back and looked for a electrical engineer, and with no success. We've revisited it, and we feel strongly that we need to have an assistant director working under Ed, learning the position, and that could be Ed's replacement in the future. We've researched, there's a lot of projects that are going on, as you heard with Cresco as an example, but I've listed a few of them in the report. We would like to go out and advertise for this Assistant Director of Electric Utility, and hopefully find somebody. And we're hoping that we can get somebody in the $90,000 to $100,000 range. I can tell you a neighboring community pays about 25% more for a similar position. And so overall, you've heard me and you'll see it in your next budget. The city of Marshall pays way under scale. I'm going to be recommending in the budget that you do a compensation study, but that'll be a discussion for the council next year when we get into budget. It's just difficult to fill positions, but we need to give Ed some help with our growing utility. And I'll be willing to answer any questions. And Ed's online, so if you want to fire any questions at Ed, feel free to.
I just want to know, when you said a neighboring community, is their population like Marshall is, I mean, is it relatively apples to apples, or is it apples to oranges?
I'd rather their population is a little bit more, but their electric load, where we're heading with our cannabis facilities, our load will be more than theirs. We're going to be approaching within 3 years that we'll be surpassing them. So population on the electric side, it's really more the load, electric load that is on the system, and those are where the needs are.
And as you look forward, I guess, from finance's perspective, I would expect that we don't consider this sort of an interim step where we're going to have to go through a transition of leadership, and then we return to a state where we've got sort of one director for the electric. We would probably long-term, given we're going to triple the load in the environment, that this is going to become more of a critical function for our community in terms of jobs and viability. I would expect that this is a long-term structure change for our electric department, where going forward, we'll have a director and an assistant director. Does that seem fair so far?
That is correct. Of the 40 municipals in the state of Michigan, with this load growth that is coming here in the next 3 years, we will be the third or fourth largest in the state of Michigan, right after Lansing and Holland and Bay City. So there's a lot of, with your electric load growing, you're going to have to staff the department to meet the needs of our customers. The time that we put in since Friday afternoon just for a simple issue was tremendous. And so we're going to need to, if you're going to have this size of a utility, you're going to need to staff it to meet the needs of our customers.
All right, any other questions for Tom or Ed at this point? All right, hearing none, the second recommendation is to approve a salary range of $90,000 to $100,000 for the Assistant Director of Electric Utility.
So moved.
Or
We have a motion by Member McNeil, support by Member Metzger. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Underhill,
did he leave?
okay, we'll come back. Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
and Member Underhill. Member Underhill, did you fall asleep?
His camera shows on, but obviously you can't see anything and there's no volume. And he's off now.
Okay, motion carried.
We will move on at this time to public comment. Oh, Ryan's back and connecting.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if we're going to need this or not, but your rules, if you're going to go past 10 o'clock, we're at 9:50 at this point, you will need to make a motion if you're going to go past 10 o'clock. We have not done this in probably a decade. So just based on debating how many comments you get, you may have to, and I can help you through that.
Okay, thank you. Member Underhill, are you able to utilize the chat function at this time?
Can't hear you yet, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I'm still connecting.
All right, so at this time, I believe it would be appropriate to move on to public comment on non-agenda items. We can go back if Ryan's able to reconnect to the audio. So anyone wishing to speak this evening on non-agenda items may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes, stating their name and address for the record. If you please indicate with either your hand raised or a comment in the chat function, we will call on you that way.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you.
Hello.
Can hear you, Barry.
Okay. Good call on the opt-out. That brings it within the realm of constitutionality, and that'll save me a lot of time at the computer. But I want to address the mask issue again. Again, very confusing messages from very different places. Of course, CDC continues with the same mantra, but there are conflicting sources, credible sources that speak a very different story as to the efficacy of mask wearing. I left a link on your chat page that will bring you to the document produced by the Ontario Civil Liberties Association, and it was directed to the director of the World Health Organization that is explicitly and openly decrying the use of masks as a threat to public health. Go ahead and read the document and it will be self-explanatory. Also, if you want to get more information about that stuff, go on to the internet and find the video Plandemic or Plandemic 2 and watch those and, you know, see what they have to say. Also, Whitmer issues executive orders demanding that we wear masks in public. Michigan State Supreme Court says those are unconstitutional. Whitmer does a side maneuver and says a lower agency person somehow has the ability to issue those kind of orders. However, back in 1931, the state legislature passed Public Act number 328, section 396, which has been codified into MCL 750-396, which says that mask wearing in public is a crime. It is a crime to wear a mask in public in Michigan. So which of these do apply? The law produced by the legislature or an instrumentality of military authority issued by the governor acting as commander-in-chief? Now, the governor of California is doing the same thing, but 3 sheriffs out there, 3 county sheriffs have openly and explicitly said that they will not follow the governor's orders because they are based on flawed thinking and flawed research. Also check out the document produced by Genevieve Brand of Johns Hopkins University, which did a statistical analysis of the CDC data, and it shows that all they did was shift death rates for other usual forms of death for elderly people, pneumonia, diabetes, cancer, heart attack. Those numbers just shifted over to COVID numbers. There was no change in the increase in the death rate. This is a big scam going on. Okay, second thing, the debacle going on up at Montgomery Street and your continual harassment against Tim Ruddick. Because of the pandemic, Tim, who as an extra source of income does a service for the city and goes around and picks up people's metal items that they throw out to the curb. He keeps them, takes them up to Olivet or Battle Creek, and gets a little money for them. It's not a lot of money, but it's a service to the people of the city. During the pandemic, the recycling places were closed, the metal recycling places were closed, so he collected it up at his property up on Montgomery Street. If he could have taken him over there, he would have done it. But instead, the city decides to come down hard and issue ordinance violations against him and require him to have to either destroy or not make useful things that he had planned on using in terms of building future structures out of the property and being able to use the being able to take the metal over and finally get it turned in for the money. But again, the wheels of injustice continue to turn, and for some reason, Tim became a violator. And
Here, you have about 30 seconds left, just to let you know.
okay, real quick. The people who make the decisions are people who like to eat sausage but don't like to see how it's made. If you want to inform yourself better on these kind of issues, get a hold of a book called Entropy, a new world vision by Jeremy Rifkin. And you'll find it very interesting. Now, again, I have Tim Ruddick here, and I think he wants to say something too.
Gary, thank you for your comments. Tim, if you could hold off for a second, we need to pass a motion to extend this meeting past 10 o'clock. Tom, if you could help us out with that wording, please.
Yes, your rules say the council shall not begin considering any matter on the agenda not yet under consideration by 10 p.m. except by a majority vote of the members present. So just would need a majority vote, a motion to extend your meeting beyond 10 o'clock. I think it'd be a simple motion.
All right, do we have a motion to extend the meeting past 10 p.m. this evening?
So moved.
We have a motion by member McNeil, support by member Traver. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yeah.
Member Traver,
Yes.
and Member Underhill.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. At this time, Tim, if you would like to speak, you may do so. Please state your name and address for the record.
Tim Ruddick, 560 North Madison Street, Marshall. Number one is I feel that the city is taking of one's property, which is against the Fifth Amendment. And I have a question that is the city trying to take my land away from me, or what are they trying to do? If council can figure that out and let me know. And then I have, it's mixed messages. And I have a proposal, and I've said this to Tom and to Attorney Revor. I have the perfect solution for their problem with my private land. And if they want it,
buy me out. I'll sell it to them. But right now, I offered it to them for 250,000. And if they want it, if they give me 200,000, I'll clean the rest of everything up and they can own it. That'll cure their problem with my private land. And that's all I have to say. So if you guys can answer that question. Yeah, oh, another thing is there was never a threat to the public, like the fence or the gate that lays along the public walkway across from my property. And that gate's been smashed and laying there for, oh, probably 20 years. So that's, yeah, selective enforcement and all this. So before I get really upset about this, I'm gonna be quiet.
All right, thank you for your comments, Tim. Any additional comments this evening on non-agenda items?
I do not see any, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing and seeing none, we will move on to council and manager communications. Member Wolfersberger.
Since this is our last meeting of 2020, this is not how I think any of us imagined saying goodbye to long-term members of our council. But to Nick Metzger and Michael McNeil, thank you for such amazing service to the city. I hope that we continue to see you active in the area and the community. Been an inspiration for all of us, I hope. So just thank you again, and best of luck with what you do next.
Thanks.
Member Traver.
That was well said. Thank you for saying all that, Scott. I echo everything you said. So yeah, best of luck to you. Thank you for your service. And I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Member Underhill.
Thank you, Nick and Michael. Appreciate everything you guys done in the past 2 years with us. And Merry Christmas, everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gates.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Nick and Michael. Thank you so much for your service and for sharing your expertise with all of us. And it's been an honor to serve with both of you. So please don't be strangers. I will say again this week to just a thank you for everybody who's being cautious out there with coronavirus in the community. I know most of us are well aware of it, but I just want to remind everybody that the hospital is, still seeing a lot of cases. There's a lot of cases in Calhoun County. And so just thank you to everybody who's taking it seriously, and let's continue valuing one another's lives and well-being. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Member McNeil.
Sure. So thank you for the kind words. Much appreciated. A couple of just quick things. I do want to thank both the current and former council members, the Mayor Karen, our former mayor, Jack Reed, city staff, Tom Tarkowitz, Trish Nelson. The work that you all do to keep us sort of organized and focused and everything moving for our city is fantastic. And I've learned a ton working with you. I would say that it takes a huge village too to keep the city going. And so for all of the community members that volunteer, for all of the board members that do all the work that sort of helps get us ready for a council decision. I want to thank everybody who participates that way too. And then just to say that, I know right now we're sort of in a spirit of divisiveness where we find first what we have fault with each other for, and then use that as sort of a platform to further our own cause, whether it be, do you wear a mask or do you not wear a mask? Are you voting one way or another? And one of the things that's been really powerful for me being part of this group as a nonpartisan governing body is that we always came together first with what we were trying to accomplish for our community. We didn't have to worry about the default positions of party automatically influencing how we thought the other person would show up and how we were predisposed to either agree or disagree with them. I think that's one of the beautiful things about what we have in front of us and the work that you have to do in front of you over the next couple of years. And I think the city is well positioned with our city staff and with our council members and with our mayor to take what is now a huge opportunity for us with employment and with new opportunities for residents of the city and really turn this into something really enviable in the broader community, what Marshall has to offer. So thank you all for your time. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve with you, and I look forward to seeing what you all do next. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Member Metzger.
Did you really need to go first? I am so not that elaborate. I think I could get emotional, and I don't usually do that. So, but I do have, before I say anything, going back to the RFPs with the transformers, Tom, on those RFPs, and I know we talked about this 2-4 years ago, about if we are going to look at having vendors, local versus out of state versus nationwide versus globally, do we put that on our RFPs as what we look at? Because that's not really fair if we don't. And I know we talked about that. And I know the reason I'm asking is because tonight it was, you know, we were trying to look locally. Well, I know that doesn't always happen because it doesn't, but, and then to now we're talking about globally. So is that on the RFP that's what we look at? That's part of.
The answer is no, we do not. We do not have a local preference ordinance. We look at, well, tonight was delivery. We look at quality, reliability. Cost isn't the top thing. We have to look out for the long term, but you know.
But that's what was cited, was local and not abroad. I mean, that was cited in our packet. So I know we're looking at it, but then we don't tell them that's what we're looking at until it's too late, you know, and then they've wasted their time for the most part. I'm sure they know that. I just think in all fairness to us and them, because sometimes it's embarrassing when we don't, and we always say, well, we're going to go with local because that's what we do. Well, people don't know that. And this is for all you, because it doesn't matter to me anymore. So it's for all you, but it gets a little frustrating sometimes with that issue, because we do like to hang around here. So anyway, the only thing I'm going to say, it's been wonderful. Learned a lot. You guys are amazing. City staff is incredible, and I give them the worst time ever, and they still talk to me. So all of you are incredible. That's it.
Thank you, Nick. Nick, you've served us since 2009. That's 12 years on the council. And Michael,
I've done 4 mayors, 4.
Michael's been on since January of 2015. And I just wanted to echo, of course, what everyone else has said this evening. I've learned so much from both of you and appreciate having the opportunity to work with you, you know, to better our community. And you're definitely going to be missed, but your dedication in representing our community is extremely appreciated. And we hope to continue to see you around and active in different community measures. So thank you so much for everything.
You're very welcome. Everybody, good luck. Take care. You're all very capable, and I'm very proud and impressed and so appreciative. So thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Nelson, anything this evening? All right, Manager Tarkowitz.
Well, I can get emotional too, Nick. I'm a melancholy. So, but no, to you and Michael. Michael, you've been really supportive. Nick also, and the trust you've given us. And I took this job only two and a half months into Nick's term. So we were newbies into this after 12 years. So I do appreciate you made me think on many items. And so it's going to be different without you. And that's okay. I don't mind taking grief and pressure from you, Nick. So it's always been fun.
You guys missed out on all those wonderful emails I send them.
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. And we will call this meeting adjourned. Have a good night.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
See y'all.
Thank you.
Christmas.